How a serial killer sliced open the throats of people walking alone in the streets of London in the year 1952. He used the Great Fog of London to his advantage. Even the most scary parts of this story are really true, and they really happened. Let's see how Thomas killed people in London.
A heavy, yellow-black shroud descended upon London, a pea souper, unlike any seen before. The air turned into a thick, poisonous soup of coal smoke and sulfur. It was a silence that screamed, a darkness that tasted of soot and iron. Somewhere in the heart of the city, Edith tightened her scarf, unable to see the curb beneath her boots. The city had ground to a halt. Buses were abandoned in the middle of the road, and the great smog turned the familiar streets into a labyrinth of shadows. Edith felt the damp cold seeping into her lungs. She reached out a hand to find a wall, a railing, anything to guide her home, but her fingers met only the freezing, sightless air. Behind her, a pair of heavy boots clicked softly against the cobblestones. Thomas moved through the smog with the confidence of a predator in his natural habitat. To him, the fog wasn't a barrier, it was a sanctuary. He pulled a straight razor from his pocket, the blade catching a ghost of light from a distant, invisible window. Edith heard the scrape of leather on stone and froze. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice muffled by the heavy atmosphere. Thomas did not answer. He stepped out of the gray curtain, a silhouette of malice. Before she could scream, the blade moved with surgical precision, faster than the eye could follow in the gloom. By the second day, the hospitals were overflowing with the breathless, and the morgues were filling with the silent. Detective Percival knelt in a narrow alleyway off Fleet Street. He held a handkerchief over his mouth, coughing as he looked down at the pale shape on the ground. This wasn't the work of the smog, this was the work of a man. Percival clicked on his heavy flashlight, but the beam was swallowed by the murk within inches. He found a single brass button near the body, cold and slick with moisture. "He's using the weather," Percival muttered to himself. The killer was a ghost in the machine of a dying city, taking lives while the air itself did the same. Thomas felt the city's pulse slowing down. He leaned against a brick wall, listening to the rhythmic, wet coughs of the people trapped in their homes. He enjoyed the anonymity. He felt like the king of a ruined world. He wiped his blade clean on a discarded newspaper, the ink staining his fingers blacker than the soot. Near the docks, Constance struggled to find her way to the pharmacy. The smog was so thick here it felt like walking through wool. She didn't see the shadow detach itself from the side of a warehouse. She only felt the sudden, terrifying presence of someone standing much too close. Thomas smiled, though she couldn't see it. A shrill whistle cut through the stagnant air. Percival was running, guided only by a sense of direction honed by years on the beat. He had heard a muffled cry near the warehouses. He stumbled over a discarded crate, his lungs burning with every gasp of the toxic air. "Stop!" he shouted into the void, knowing it was futile. Thomas turned, the blade still wet. He saw the flicker of Percival's flashlight, a dim orange glow in the soup. He didn't run, he waited. Percival burst through a bank of fog, and suddenly they were face to face. Two men in a world that had ceased to exist beyond the reach of their arms. The struggle was frantic and silent. Percival lunged, grabbing Thomas by the wrist, desperate to keep the blade away. They tumbled against the cold, wet stones, their breath coming in ragged, wheezing gasps. In the dark, it was hard to tell where the killer ended and the law began. The smog watched them, impartial and suffocating. On the fifth day, the wind finally rose, dragging the poison out to sea. As the sun broke through the thinning veil, Percival stood alone on the embankment. The killer had vanished back into the shadows of the city, leaving only a blood-stained scarf behind. The great smog was over, but London would never breathe quite the same way again.
Thank you for listening to the story. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to subscribe and show your support to the channel.